On today's episode, we're breaking down the second half of our final mock draft here at Locked On NHL Prospects with picks 27 through 50 of our top 50 mock draft here to wrap up the campaign.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USHL scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's episode, we're going to be wrapping up the mock draft that we began. These two episodes are being uploaded simultaneously. So if you just watched the first part, welcome here to part two. And if you're only tuning into part two, maybe check out part one as well. So without further ado, make yourselves comfortable, grab yourself something to drink, and let's just dive straight into the mock draft here. And we'll kick things off at 27th overall, picking up where we left off in the previous episode with the Washington Capitals on the clock. And last season, we saw the Capitals in the first round going for a high-scoring WHLer who doesn't necessarily have speed or skating on his side, but a whole lot of offensive intelligence and creativity. And I have them doing a similar thing here this draft around, and that's with Cole Reschny of the Victoria Royals, a player who dominated in the back half of the season, was excellent through the playoff campaign, and great for Team Canada at the U18 World Championships as well. There's a lot going for this player, a very skilled guy, but I think one of the concerns that might lead to him falling a bit on draft day relative to his skill set is the fact that his playmaking has largely come from the perimeter at this stage. He's not the most middle-driven of players. He has some elements of Matthew Savoy in his game, and if you've remembered kind of how he's developed since being drafted, there have been some hurdles on the way because, again, he was always very much a perimeter-based playmaker, and though there are some of those concerns with Reschny, there's also the same kind of top six skill and upside. And I think the Capitals are going to look at what's left available on the board, see a lot of bottom six projections, and just swing hard on that upside here at 27th overall. Moving on to the player whose image is big on screen right now, William Horcoff is going 28th in this mock draft to the Winnipeg Jets. This is a player with a lot of Adam Lowry in his game. He's hardworking, he's big, he's rangy, solid defensively, very good in terms of off-the-wall playmaking, can play on the wing, like he's listed as left winger here, but can also play at center. That positional versatility is always important, and he could even be playing NHL minutes within 2 or 3 years, and there aren't many players in this range of the class that have that going for them, so I think the Jets are going to look at his toolkit, at his lineage. I mean, he's the son of former Edmonton Oilers captain Shawn Horcoff, and see a player that has still a lot of running room in terms of offensive growth, is playing in a great program at the University of Michigan, and brings that combination of physicality and offensive intelligence that could really pop come playoff time. Then at 29th overall, we have the Carolina Hurricanes selecting, and they always go for value on draft day, and I think they're going to do the same thing here with Benjamin Kindel, the high-scoring center/right winger playing with the Calgary Hitmen in the WHL, was the second top scorer among CHL draft-eligible talents this season, trailing only Michael Misa. And this is a very intelligent playmaker. He's able to break down defenses, solid puck handler, solid goal scorer, but it's the combination of playmaking and intelligence that makes him really quite special. He's also quite an intense player. He's able to play a checking game. Doesn't have that size going for him just yet, but he's more than just one-dimensional. And even though I think he might need a little bit more in terms of that middle drive, he's very pacey on puck. So he's got a lot of things to work with. Overall, an exciting player who could go to the Carolina Hurricanes here on draft day. Then at 30th overall, we have the San Jose Sharks on the clock. And after going slightly off the board at second overall and selecting Anton Frondel, I have them going and swinging on pure upside here with Cullen Potter from Arizona State University, playing in the college ranks this season after forgoing on his U18 NTDP campaign and just skipping a step there, going straight to college. I think he's a player that San Jose would look at and just see high level in terms of his speed, his outright skating ability, the puck handling, the playmaking, have some real elements of flash. But what's impressive with this player is that he went into this campaign as an undersized all-skill player heading into college, and he really fought and got himself a top 6 center role at Arizona State this season by also improving his two-way game. This is a guy that really took big strides in that two-way impact, in that off-puck energy. I think there's a lot to like with his profile, and there's definitely enough skill for him to go higher than this on draft day, but the size might scare off a team or two on the way. Then at 31st overall, we have the Philadelphia Flyers back on the clock. They're going to be on the clock seemingly half of this entire episode. They got 5 picks here in this selection of like 24 selections. And I think that Shane Vansaghi makes a lot of sense. As a reminder, in the first part of this mock draft, they went out and selected at, first of all, 6th overall. They went big and picked Jake O'Brien, the playmaking center from the Brantford Bulldogs, and then followed that up by selecting a big goaltender in Joshua Ravensburger. So I think that here in this selection, they're just going to go for a role player who can be the perfect bottom 6, intense, energetic, violent winger, but can also be a complement to more skilled guys up the lineup in terms of insulating players like Michkov, like Jake O'Brien. I think he'd be a great fit. This is a really projectable winger. He plays with that level of physicality, middle drive, but also has flashed a level of pace and handling and playmaking down the stretch that is really, really solid. And though his skating needs some work, I think that he's a player that in a worst case scenario could even be playing 4th line minutes as of next season. He's very much an NHL projectable talent. I think he's not going to take very long to become that kind of role player and could even grow into a 3rd line, maybe even 2nd line capacity in a complementary toolkit. And I think that the Flyers are going to look at that and kind of roll back the years on the Broad Street Bullies a little bit by selecting Shane Vansaghi. And to wrap up the first round of this mock draft, we have the Calgary Flames on the clock, and I think that Jack Nesbitt would be very appealing in this selection. They went and selected Lyndon Lakovic at 18th overall with their first round selection. But he's a winger, and they need more reinforcements down the middle, and that's what they're doing here with a big 6'4" OHL center with Jack Nesbitt. He's got some scoring tools. He's got some skill in him. He's not been the most consistent in terms of offensive production this season. He's at like exactly a point a game in the OHL this campaign, but I think he's a guy that could really shore things up as a middle 6 or 3rd line center for the Calgary Flames down the stretch. Then at 33, heading into the 2nd round, we have the San Jose Sharks on the clock once again, as they were last year at 33rd overall, and they got a great pick there in Igor Chernyshov. But I think they're going to stick with an OHL talent this time around with Henry Brzustewicz of the London Knights. Two-way right shot defenseman, has a lot more offense to show than he's shown so far in his career. Of course, the offensive opportunities in London were taken up by guys like Sam Dickinson and Oliver Bonk last year, but he's a guy that could really take big steps next season. Great skater, good two-way impact, good puck mover. There's a lot to work with this player, and San Jose does not have the most talent down the right side of their defense. And after going out and selecting Anton Frondel and Cullen Potter, I think building on that with a defenseman who can move the puck and is a right shot, which is of course an organizational need, makes a bunch of sense. At 34th overall, we have the Chicago Blackhawks on the clock, selecting a potential faller on draft day, Sascha Boumedienne, a left shot defenseman playing with Boston University this past campaign, who went from one of the worst skaters in the draft class to being a pretty average projection as a skater. Really impressive a curve in terms of his skating ability this season, going from struggling very, very visibly in the NCAA to being a very solid skater at the college level by year's end. I think he's a guy that there's still some decision-making breakdowns in his game, but he's a really good breakout passer, finds the first pass very well. And in terms of retrievals, I think was really able to find a comfort zone against college level checking by the end of the season. And he's a guy that could definitely bring some puck moving upside, especially if that under pressure decision-making is able to take a step or two in his development. At 35th overall, the Nashville Predators are back on the clock after having made multiple selections earlier in the first round, going for James Higgins at 5th overall, and following that up with Cameron Reed and Max Psanitska as defensemen at 23rd and 26th overall. So who might they go for at 35? And I think that a toolsy, big winger would be really enticing in this slot. So I have him going for Mason West of the Fargo Force and Edina High School, the dual sport athlete who just committed to Michigan State University as his college, but he's first going to take a season where he's going to finish his football career because, again, he's the quarterback at his high school, and he's going to play his senior season there this year. And after that, he's going to be playing in Fargo in the USHL. So it's the year after that that he'll be making the jump to college hockey. He's very raw, but at 6'6", he's a wonderful skater who flashes a high-end degree of puck handling ability. And on top of that skill and desire and will to engage and work hard and having that size, he's also incredibly intelligent in terms of the awareness and the scanning habits and the peripheral vision. He's very clearly a quarterback on the ice. And I think that's an exciting toolkit. And for a team like Nashville, who's already logged 3 selections here, there's some risk with Mason West. He's a long-term project. He's not going to be ready in the first 3-4 years of his development. He's going to need 5 or 6. But Nashville has the luxury of time to wait on this player, and I think the wait will be worthwhile. Then at 36, we have the Philadelphia Flyers back on the clock once again after selecting, of course, Jake O'Brien, Joshua Ravensburgen, and now, of course, Shane Vansaghi. I think that the next player to go for here is Alexander Zharovsky from Tolpar Ufa in Russia. Very skilled right winger with excellent handling ability, all the skill in the world. And I think that in terms of building that Russian spine in that team, you already have Michkov. Building on that with a guy like Zharovsky and one more guy who's coming up a bit later, I think makes a lot of sense for the Flyers, but he also fits an organizational need. He brings some size, he brings skill from the wing, and just brings a bit more diversity in terms of depth scoring down the lineup, down the line. At 37th overall, the Washington Capitals are back on the clock, and I think that they would be going for a more projectable player than they went with their first pick, which was Cole Reschny from the WHL, and instead go for a guy who's going to be a bottom sixer, but might be a bottom sixer within 2 or 3 years. And that's Milton Gastrin from Modo Hockey in Sweden. He's a center. He can play the wing as well. High energy, just really good details with the game. Doesn't bring the most dynamic offense in the world, but works very hard. He's got that pace. He's middle driven, hardworking defensively, makes quick pace decisions. I think he'd be a really good fit with what the Capitals are trying to build there. At 38th overall, the Seattle Kraken are on the clock. And I think an interesting selection here for the Kraken would be Jacob Rombach of the Lincoln Stars, a really rangy 6'6" defenseman. He's over 200 pounds, still has to actually learn to use his frame and use his physicality to its limits. He's still a guy learning the physical side of the game, but that's something that will come with time, in my opinion. And he's a real retrieval artist, one of the best puck retrievers in this year's draft class among defensemen. A really, really good player in terms of shoulder checking, scanning, and making forecheckers miss, and just making a good, quick first pass, gain the puck out of the defensive zone with control under pressure. He's really money in those situations. So even though he doesn't bring high-end offensive potential, he'll be able to help spark offensive opportunities from the breakout. But to wrap up this first segment, we have the Buffalo Sabres on the clock, and I think they might be going for a goaltender, and that might be Semyon Frolov. And he's a very interesting netminder playing in Russia in the Spartak Moscow system, and he, for some scouts, is the best goaltender in the entire draft class. He might even get looks inside the first round and could even be the first goaltender selected in this class ahead of Joshua Ravensburgen. But in this mock, he's falling down to the Buffalo Sabres at 39th overall, and they're happily picking him up. They have some goaltenders in that system, guys like Topias Leinonen, of course, Devin Levi as well. But I think adding another layer of insurance down the line and goaltenders you can always just sit on and see how they develop, and you might just come out like bandits from it in a couple of years' time. I think that makes sense for the Buffalo Sabres with where they're at in terms of their organizational needs at this stage. But that wraps up this first segment. In the next one, we're going to wrap up the show with picks 40 through 50, the last 10 players of this fun mock draft. But first, a quick message from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keeping you feel fueled for longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for my busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need that quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell variety are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All righty, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment of this mock draft with picks 40 through 50. And this is very exciting. I think that this is the range that I'm almost most excited about as a scout is the second round. It is just a wild west out there with some massive gems, some real swing for the fences, and some perhaps perplexing selections in here as well. I'm obviously not going to nail like 50% of these picks, let alone all of them. Probably going to be closer to 10%, maybe aiming for 25 here. But overall, mock drafts are a crapshoot in terms of the likelihood of these things turning out in terms of these slots. But I'm trying to also bring players up that make sense for these teams. That even if these aren't the exact players selected in these slots, that maybe some of the thinking does align with what NHL teams are going to be doing at the draft, which again is just about a week away. It's coming up. Very exciting stuff here in the scouting sphere. But let's kick things off here at 40th overall. And guess who's back on the clock? It's the team with like half of the first half of the second round in terms of selections, the Philadelphia Flyers. And I think that they're going to keep building on that Russian spine, as I was talking about with Alexander Zharovsky and Matvei Michkov. Kurban Limatov is the next player to be added into the ranks, a smooth skating left shot defenseman from Russia playing in the Dynamo Moscow system. He'd be a great fit in this range. He might go higher than this on draft day with that mobility, with the defensive projectability. He could be a really solid number 3, number 4 defenseman with like 4 or 5 years of development. He's a bit of a project, but once he gets there, he could be a really valuable NHL piece. I think the Flyers are going to look at that and be very, very enticed. But moving on to 41 overall, we have William Moore going to the Montreal Canadiens. This is probably the low end of the range for William Moore on draft. They have him falling a little bit, but I think they have to be very, very interested in this profile of player. The Canadiens selected Michael Hage last season in the first round at 21st overall. Lanky, skilled, very similar frame to William Moore in terms of where they're at in terms of weight and size in their draft year campaigns and the runway they have in adding weight, filling out, evolving their games as they age. And I think with Moore, because you have an underlying foundation of a high-end shot, good skill in terms of handling and playmaking, very good skater as well, a growing physical game that's still very ineffective at this stage because he is so lanky, but a very, very high degree of intelligence. I think he's a character guy. I think he's an intelligent player, takes that at a game at a level that his teammates just couldn't keep up with much of this season in the NTDP. And he's going off to a really good program in Boston as well. So not much to complain about the development path with William Moore. I think the Habs would love a player in this mold. He'd be a great fit in the system. And in terms of an upside swing who can maybe even play the center down the road, I think he'd be a fantastic selection for the Habs. At 42, we have Ryker Lee going to the New York Islanders, a team that, of course, hit the jackpot in this draft before the draft even happened, winning the lottery for first overall and likely landing Matthew Schaefer. I think a player to build off of that in this draft with would be Ryker Lee, implementing a lot of offensive upside and skill and creativity and dynamism, growing power game as well. His skating is definitely the weakest part of his toolkit at this stage, but he's grown 6 inches in the last 3 years. He's still getting used to his body operating at his current size. The skating will improve with time. I'm very confident of that. And he adds that a heavy shot, excellent playmaking skill, like very, very creative and intelligent as a playmaker. Great puck handler, like one of the better puck handlers in this class. I think he's top 5 in the class in terms of handling the puck. And you add to that a good motor, decent intelligence. There's so much to like with this profile. And I think after going out and selecting Cole Eiserman last season, why not pick a player that Cole Eiserman has had a previous history of playing with? These two played together at Shattuck St. Mary's U14 hockey, and I think that they could rekindle the chemistry they had there. And Ryker Lee's nickname in that program was the Magician because of what he could do with the puck. Maybe the Islanders seek to reunite those two friends. At 43rd overall, we have the New York Rangers selecting, and I think that they're going for a different style of player than the Islanders. Rather than swinging for the fences on skill, going for a projectable bottom six center in Cole McKinney from the NTDP. This is a guy whose motor never stops, who's playing first line minutes all year long. Very reliable player for the program this campaign. He plays with that motor. He plays with intensity, middle-driven physicality, very good net front, good release in tight, grown as a playmaker and a play connector, especially in transition, quickly passing the puck between his line mates and his wingers, and overall just being the glue guy on that line. I think he'd be a really good fit with what the Rangers are trying to build in terms of the mentality of their bottom six, and I think he'd be a great addition to that core. Then at 44, we have Jakob Ihs-Wozniak going to the Detroit Red Wings, the product of Luleå HF in Sweden. A guy that was mocked very high in the top 20 in mock drafts earlier on in the season, especially going back to last summer, whose stock has steadily fallen. And he scored a lot at the junior level this season. He also played professional, and where he didn't score very much, but he was scoring a lot at the junior level. But the particularly impressive thing for me with this player is that he's this all offense guy who definitely still has to add a layer of physicality to his game in the coming seasons. But he really, really improved defensively this campaign. Like, just excellent defensive results. If you're looking at the micro stats tracked by my colleague Mitch Brown over at Elite Prospect, he has a Patreon. Definitely go look at that. But the defensive numbers for Ihs-Wozniak were fantastic this campaign, both at the junior level and against pro competition. I think he'd be a really, really good fit for Detroit. They, of course, love drafting out of Sweden. I already have them doing that with Victor Eklund earlier in this mock draft. But I think that Ihs-Wozniak, with that growing defensive intelligence, could be a really good fit with the Detroit Red Wings. But at 45, we have Charlie Trethewey going to the Philadelphia Flyers again. Like, they're picking everywhere here in the second round. Is pretty funny. But I think Trethewey would be a really interesting player to kind of pair with the rest of the draft haul. As a reminder, they've landed Jake O'Brien, goaltender Joshua Ravensbergen, following that up with Shane Vansaghi, Alexander Zharovsky, and Kurban Limatov. You got a lot of positions covered, a lot of bases covered. One that you don't have covered yet is a right shot defenseman. So I think Charlie Trethewey fits into the need in that sense, but also brings a level of physicality, high-end mobility. He's one of the better skating defensemen eligible in this entire draft class, and he took big strides in his development this season. He's one of the younger players in the draft class. He's an August birthday. I think that with another year of development under his feet, he's really going to take some big steps. He played hot potato with the puck earlier in this campaign, but by year's end was much more stable, reliable, making the simple, smart play rather than complicating things and holding onto the puck for too long. I think he's on an upwards trajectory. But that wraps things up here for the second segment. In the final one, we're going to do the last five players here of the mock draft with Utah, Vancouver, Philadelphia, Montreal, and New Jersey, wrapping it up here. But first, a quick message from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. All right, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment. Kicking it off at 46th overall, the Utah Mammoth going up onto the podium, or the virtual podium here, because, of course, the draft has been decentralized for this season. I think Ivan Ryabkin might go in this range. I think there's a lot of possibilities with this player. He might fall to the fourth round. It's very possible. From what I've heard in terms of the interviews in the combine, his stock definitely fell with those in-person exchanges. But I think a team like Utah, who loves their violence, loves their physicality, could look at this player and see value in him, even if he just ends up as a physical playmaking bottom six checker. If he's able to go beyond that and become a second liner, become an everyday third line center, anything of that and better, it's found money in this range. I mean, if you're getting an NHLer, you're already very happy with a mid-second round selection. I think with Ryabkin, yeah, there's definitely risk. He might flame out. He might not hit the NHL in any capacity. But if he does, this is a very fun, very violent player. If you want to learn more about Ryabkin and the intricacies of his game, I wrote an entire article on him alongside my colleague Dylan Griffin over at Elite Prospects. I will link that down below in the description if you want to take a look. It's like 2,000 words, deep dive, how he plays the game, how he thinks the game, and what still has to come in his game for him to hit this kind of upside. But I think he'd be a great fit with the Utah Mammoth. Then at 47th overall, and the player who's blown up here on screen with the big image, Cameron Schmidt of the Vancouver Giants. And I think he might just stick in Vancouver with the Canucks selecting him here at 47th overall. This is falling in terms of pure skill. In terms of pure skill, this is an all-day, everyday top 20 talent in this year's draft class. He's arguably the fastest player in this draft. He's arguably the best shooter in this draft. He's arguably the most physical, undersized player in this draft. He has so much going for him. Relentless motor, very middle-driven, excellent puck handler, great playmaker, like 8 on 10 in terms of like every offensive category. And like 8 is not something that we give out lightly. Very, very, very good offensively. But he's 5'7". He's going to fall on draft day. We know this. We've seen this a million times before. It's going to happen with Cameron Schmidt this year as well. Is he going to fall this far? I'm not sure. He could go anywhere between like 28 and 65, I think is possible. But I think that if Vancouver's on the stage here, and they already have had one pick here at the draft at 15th overall, they went with Jackson Smith, a big physical defenseman of the WHL. Why not just swing for the fences on offensive upside here? You need more offensive punch in Vancouver, and offensive punch is everything that Cameron Schmidt brings to the table. At 48th overall, the Philadelphia Flyers with their last selection of this mock draft, their 7th pick. I'm not going to run through all the names again. I've done it a million times already here, but I have them going with another left shot defenseman and going on size and high-end mobility with Haoxi or Simon Wang from the Oshawa Generals in the OHL, a 6'6" left shot defenseman. He's over 200 pounds and one of the smoothest skaters in this year's draft class in terms of four-way mobility. Truly exceptional on his feet. The issues are he's very raw in every other capacity. Definitely has some defensive strengths in terms of angling attackers towards the boards, using his size, using his range, using his mobility as a big deterrent defensively. But still, I mean, offensively, very raw. I think he scored, 2 points this season? Something like that. It was very limited in terms of production this campaign, but I think that Philadelphia is going to look at their options and not see anyone that has this level of upside left on the board at this stage, especially with a guy like Cameron Schmidt taking the pick before. I think he makes sense, especially with having had 6 selections already here in the top 45. Why not just take that big swing for the fences on the elite skating 6'6" blue liner? Then at 49th overall, the Montreal Canadiens back on the clock after spending their first round selections on a pair of wingers with Justin Carbonneau and Carter Bear, and then their first second round selection at 41 on William Moore. I think they're going defense here. They've gone with 3 forwards here already. I think going for a right shot, physical, punishing blue liner is what the Habs need. The right shot blue line core is a bit empty within the Habs system relative to everything else they have. And I think that going for a guy that is just punishing in his checks, very solid defensively, and showed some flair offensively sometimes with the puck on his stick as well as growth potential there, I think the Habs would be very happy with this style of player who maybe only ends up as your number 5, number 6 defenseman in the NHL, but maybe, just maybe, could be your violent number 4 on a second pairing. That's great value here in the middle of the second round. Then to wrap up the mock draft, the last pick we have, the New Jersey Devils. Their first selection here at the draft at 50th overall. And I think a very interesting name on the board here is a 6'4" center out of the WHL and the Kelowna Rockets, Hayden Paupanekis. He's a really big guy, powerful mover, good skater, good puck handler, lots of skill, I think, in his game, has a good shot. And next season, he has the reins in Kelowna as the first line center. He could be playing a bunch of minutes with Tija Ginla. You could see his totals just absolutely exploding next campaign. I think he's a guy that mixes power and skill really well in this range of the draft and will make a lot of sense here for the Devils and what they still need to add to their forward core in their prospect pool. But that wraps up the mock draft, the final mock draft of the 2025 NHL campaign. And let me know what your thoughts are down below. What do you think is going to happen on draft day? What surprises are you anticipating? And what are your takeaways of this mock draft? What did you like? What did you dislike? Let me know down below. I'm always curious to hear your thoughts. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. We always appreciate it. And if you're a second listen, you can head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything that you need to know to build yourself a competitive and sustainable fantasy roster. That's everything from me today. I'm very excited for the draft. It's coming up. Let's get prepped for it. Still got a lot of work coming your way in terms of scouting reports on draft eligible talents here in the coming weeks. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. But for today, that's everything. I'm your host, Sebastian High, and thank you so much for tuning in as always. And I look forward to catching you listening again very, very soon.